folks, welcome to the EDM studio. I thought that today we could talk a little bit about what's maybe the most fundamental question of all, which is what is sound? And it's a surprisingly complex topic from the perspective of a producer. Now you can think about it in terms of the physical definition, which is that sound is a pressure wave that travels through a medium, like air to your ear. But that's really only part of the equation that you have to think about when you're working on your mix. And so today I thought that we could talk about it more holistically, all the way from your production through your sound card, through air as a medium, and then ultimately through your ear and then to your brain. Because at each step you're going to lose some information, or in some cases maybe gain information, and that's something that's important to think about when you're producing music. So in order to dive into that question a little bit deeper, let's conduct an experiment. I've composed this masterpiece here in Logic, which is a single note, and it's just a simple sawtooth wave. So it sounds like this. And I went ahead and imported that into Audacity, and it sounds like this. And we can look a little closer at the actual waveform, and you can see that it's this simple sawtooth pattern. And what we're going to do is we're going to play it back through my speakers and then record it through my microphone. So what that's going to represent is sort of what wave would your ear see, or I guess what wave would your ear hear if we were to play this composition through speakers. So let's go ahead and record and play it back. And we've got our recording. So when you look at the recording, what you'll see is that the waveform is quite a bit more complex. It doesn't look like this simple sawtooth pattern that we had in the original output. And not only that, but if you look at the way that this decays, it's no longer that simple crisp decay. It looks like there's something else going on there. And the reason that I wanted to start with this question is that it really provides a good starting point for a lot of the things that I want to talk about on this channel. So if it doesn't make sense right off the bat, that's probably a good thing, because it means that there are a lot more videos for me to make. So let's talk about what happens between the signal that's output from Logic and the one that is ultimately heard by your ear, or in this case, my microphone. So start with a digital signal. It exists as zeros and ones on your hard drive, and we need to get that into an electrical signal in the real world. And the way that we do that is that we go through a digital to analog conversion. And at that point, there's going to be some information lost because no digital to analog converter is perfect. So that's the first point at which the signal might end up getting modified. The next step is that electrical signal, it's going to go through an amplifier and ultimately to your speaker, and the speaker is going to vibrate, and it's going to try and reproduce that signal as a pressure wave. And the speaker is not going to be able to reproduce that signal completely accurately, and the speaker itself is going to have some frequency response associated with it. So as an example, if you're playing your song on a gigantic sound system in a club, it's probably going to sound a lot different than if you play it through the speakers on your laptop. Like for instance, the subwoofers in the club are going to be a lot better at reproducing bass frequencies than the small speakers on your laptop. There's also another interesting thing happening here. So in this case, I have two speakers on my desk, and they're associated with the left and the right channel. Now, in this case, we're playing the same signal through both speakers, but the way that they're positioned, one sound wave might arrive at my ear more quickly than the other. And not only that, but the sound is going to bounce off of all the walls in the room and all the other objects and stuff. And so the signals are going to end up kind of overlapping. And what that's called in terms of an effect in After Effects is it's a reverb effect. But there's all sorts of interesting things that can happen with stereo sound. You can pan your instruments left and right, and what that's simulating is sort of the delay between your left and right ear, which is the mechanism that your brain uses to figure out where a sound is coming from. And there's also other effects like the chorus effect that are kind of trying to mimic what happens when you have a lot of different voices. So that's another interesting thing that happens at this step. And then finally, that signal is going to go into your ear and then ultimately your brain. And your ear has a frequency response as well. So there are certain sounds that you might hear more loudly than others. And then also the brain is going to interpret certain signals differently. So, there might be certain things in the song that, because of the way that they're positioned, you won't actually hear them unless you really actively listen for them. And that's sort of the basis for compression algorithms like MP3, which try to strip away information that the algorithm thinks you're not going to hear anyway. So I think that's enough for one day. But as you can see, there's really a lot more complexity to this question than meets the eye. And I thought that was kind of a good reason to start with it, because it really illuminates a lot of the different things that you might want to take into consideration when you're making your mix. So, thanks for checking it out, and I'll see you next time.